Hello, I'm Charles Malet, and I have with me today Jon Cook, who is a fourth-generation dairy farmer from Wiltshire in England. I should point out at this stage that if there's any disturbance to the audio or video quality of this, that's an indication of how broadband services are provided to the countryside in the United Kingdom. So apologies in advance if there are any glitches, but that will reinforce the challenges that are faced by farmers today. There will be notes following this interview, and that will give detail with regards to what Jon does, and also any links to things that are mentioned at the end. So please go to ukcolumn.org for further detail. Now, Jon, thank you very much indeed for joining me as a guest for a UK Column interview. It's a pleasure to have you here. And I think for the viewers and listeners, let's just set the scene. So tell me, please, what is it exactly that you do? How do you do it? And most importantly, why do you do it?
Okay, well, thanks for having me on. I'm, as you said, fourth generation farmer. We are actually we're raw milk producers. So we literally milk the cows and sell it to the consumer direct, normally for the health benefits associated with that milk. We run a calf foot system, commonly referred to as cow-calf, and that means that we keep the cows and calves together for pretty much as long as I think they need to be together. So minimum 4 months, but sometimes we've had them go up to a year, which isn't always very economically sensible. But my focus is always on the health of the animals and the well-being of the animals. We only feed grass, so we see a species-appropriate diet. That's because it produces better food. If the old average, what goes in, what comes out, if you put in what's supposed to go in and then what comes out, it's going to be much better for everybody. We transitioned from a very commercial, semi-commercial, I suppose, commercial system about 5-6 years ago to the system we're in now. So my yield is probably 10% of what it was 6 years ago. And it's a completely different way of farming, completely different mindset. And like I said, I sell all my milk direct now to the end user. I don't have enough. So we're in this strange position where we're doing farming exactly how we want to farm, but literally can't get enough milk at the moment.
That's an amazing story. And obviously, although frustrating that you're unable to match the demand, that sounds like a terrific success story in this day and age. Just tell me about what it was that pushed you to make that change, to convert from how you had been doing it to how you're doing it now. Okay,
a lot of it's to do with my personal story. I'm a carnivore. I'm thinking, I started doing blood tests about five years ago to find out, basically, where a private blood test to find out where my health lies. And I was a little bit shocked. I was diabetic, very overweight. I was on a highway to a heart attack, and I had to change my lifestyle, my way of thinking about food. So I literally stopped carbs and sugar the next day when I had my blood test done. And it was a revelation for me. I lost 5 stone in 6 months. I was a little bit of a fatty before, and sadly, I didn't even think I was that fat, but clearly I was. My weight doesn't fluctuate now. And it's interesting that my blood tests, I still do regular blood tests. They pretty much are equalized, and they're all pretty much in good range. My brain fog went. So I realized that my personal species-appropriate diet was meat and animal fat, animal protein. So I'm one of those really lucky people. I actually produce pretty much everything I eat. I'm really lucky. My food cost is virtually zero. I don't have a need to go to a shop or a supermarket. I just can go out to the freezer and get what I need. So I realized that, well, if I've done that for myself, then my cows probably shouldn't be eating cereals, which is not something they would normally go to. The stuff I was feeding my cows, soya and all the other ingredients that go into the animal feeds that we've been as an industry feeding for quite a long time now, as waste products from the human market, it wasn't a species appropriate. So it changes the meat, it changes the milk, and I was shocked when I stopped feeding cereals to my cows. They basically were in a strop for about 5 months. They wouldn't come to the milking parlour. I had cows coming into my face and mooing. They were addicted to the carbohydrates as well. It was a bizarre time, and I nearly broke. I nearly said, "Well, Christ, let's just get some more, because this is killing me." Because the milking was just it was hideous. Milking always used to be fun because they would come in and they'd fight to come in and they'd give loads of milk, and exactly the opposite happened over that transition period before they realised they weren't ever going to get any of their sweets. It's a drug. They were drugged just like I was drugged. I was a complete carb addict. I mean, the food I could eat in a day was disgusting. The amount of foods: shortbread, flapjack, white bread, crisps, biscuits, just pile it up. I only eat once. I have one meal a day now. I have about half a kilo of meat, a yogurt, and a pint of milk, and I run on that all day. Yeah, because that's all I need. I'm satiated. I'm never hungry. I never go through all those things. So I've transitioned my cows onto that as well. And on the back of that, so we're just feeding grass. So our grass management has to be a little bit better. We have to. I mean, we haven't used fertilizers or sprays for quite a few years now, just because it never felt right. But it's really expensive, and I would far rather have more ground, rent more ground, and just not apply the fertilizers and have a far more pure forage for the cows. So that's how I got to where I got. So it's more to do with me actually than the cows. I transitioned the cows onto my diet, if you like, to be species appropriate to them.
Incredible insight into a personal journey, and there's a lot to unpick or unpack from that. Let's just go to the dietary side of it for a second, because obviously that's a huge part of not just your life but the cows as well. And really what you're describing, I think it would be fair to say, flies in the face of an awful lot of content that is now pushed out by mainstream media and indeed government. But the lobbying against the exact position that you describe is terrific. So what was it that effectively encouraged you to push on during that 5-month period when the cows were refusing to take part in the scheme?
Yeah, they really didn't like it. They I think basically because I felt so much better when I changed, then I wasn't prepared to. It felt like I was poisoning them. I felt like a drug dealer. I was giving them their drugs, and I was having to go through the withdrawal with them, just in the same way I did. I mean, when I cut out carbs and sugar, I had a headache for 2 to 3 months, whilst my body adjusted to it. So I had empathy. I knew why they were being so hideous to me, and so. Yeah, like I said, I did nearly break, but I knew that the end result would be much better for them. So I stuck with it.
It's been the right decision for you and for the business side of it. Specifically on the product, the raw milk side of things, were you producing the raw milk prior to the change in diet, or was that a change also?
No, we produced raw milk before I changed the diet. Okay. And again, some of this was customer driven. We had a lady who was her baby was soya intolerant. So even if she ate soya and breastfed, the baby was having a reaction. So we cut out soya a year before I stopped the cereals altogether. And I don't even know much about milk. There's different beta-casein proteins. So A1, A2. I don't know if you've heard about the A1, A2. So basically, A2 is like the ancient cow, if you like, the cow that would have been a majority A2. Now everybody can process the A2 beta-casein, but not everybody can process the A1. So as a result of selective breeding, the A1 became prevalent. So whereas a lot of people are saying milk intolerant, they're actually protein intolerant. So we had a customer come to us very early on when we started doing it and said, "Can I have A2 milk?" Didn't even have a clue what she was talking about. Looked into it. Then she said, "Can I buy a cow and you milk it for me?" And I wasn't very keen on that, so I just went out and bought 5 cows that were A2, and I used to milk those separately. And I'd milk them at the start of milking. We'd separate their milk, and we would, if anybody came to us and said they were milk intolerant, first of all, we would give them the raw milk, because lactose intolerance is actually it's quite funny, because lactose intolerant people are the purebreds, which is the irony. They're looked at as being, oh, you can't digest. But actually, we're not supposed to be able to digest lactose. So as a genetic mutation, I don't know how many thousands of years ago, it allows humans to process pasteurized milk. We shouldn't be able to. So my milk has the lactase enzyme in it. So if you're lactose intolerant, you can drink my milk with absolutely no problem at all, because you can digest it. The enzyme is there to digest it. So if they also had reactions to that, then we put them on the A2. So we could work out whether people were lactose or A2 intolerant. And there was quite a large percentage were A2 intolerant, A1 intolerant, so they could have the A2 milk. Part of that meant that we then only bred for A2. So in the last 5 years, we've just been breeding A2 cows. So we are now producing A2 milk. So if we get anybody come to us, and that is a small amount of people that actually can't tolerate our milk, even though they think they've got milk intolerance, there's very few people that can actually who find our. I think I've had 3 in 5 years that are genuinely, there's something in the milk that they can't tolerate.
How incredible, John! Just go back a little bit and just explain, or at least can we just set this in context of the sort of the wider milk industry, and can you just explain a little bit about how milk that arrives on, say, a supermarket shelf has been treated, and how that compares with what it is that you produce? And so obviously, I understand what you're saying about the intolerances and whatnot, but just to give an idea of how far removed what you're doing is from, say, what might be described as conventional practice.
Okay, yeah, conventional milking, which is something that I partook in a few years ago. So those farms are driven for yield. They are trying to get as much milk into the tank as possible. So that includes feeding their cows a very high starch, high protein, high fat diet, which makes the cows. So milk is effectively excess energy. So if you get the maintenance of the cow met, then anything else you can get her to metabolize will turn into milk or meat. And the farmers are incredible. The things that they can, the manipulation they can do to the diets to get the cows to milk is incredible. And I always say this, that people just think that it's industrial and it's really hard on the cows, but the cows, the farmers, certainly the farmers I know, they are really good farmers. They look after their cows. They really do care about their cows. The cows are comfortable. All of their needs are pretty much met. They're never hungry. The water's good. The feet are good. The bedding's good. The environment's good. But those cows are doing a marathon every single day. They are working really, really hard. And because of that, they break. They're just like athletes. You get a high performance athlete, they break. When they break really badly. So the reliance, not so much now, but was on antibiotics to keep these animals going. And all the agricultural livestock industry was the same, especially pigs. Pigs relied on antibiotics quite a lot. And morally, that's the wrong way to be doing, to get cows to have to work that hard, that you're reliant on the veterinary services to keep them healthy. Seems very wrong for me. For milk yield, I mean, my cows probably give about 2,000 litres a year that I can sell per cow. The commercial guys are getting up 10, 12, 13,000 litres. I mean, our cows' jobs are, I liken it to donkers on Western Beach as opposed to national hunt horses at Cheltenham. They come out in the summer, they wander up and down a little bit, and then they go and have a nice winter off. Whereas the national hunt horses, they're training all the time, and they're really, really up against it. So I think we both have the same interest in the animal welfare, but my bent is quite the other way. So I'm very low pressure. It's all about giving the cow what they need to feel either fulfilled or basically happy. And I'm not saying the other farmers don't. So I really have to ascertain that the other farmers are doing a really good job. They're micro managing on the like the calf welfare, for instance. The calf comes out, they give it, they actually will make sure it has enough colostrum. They will put it in an individual pen when that calf is eating enough milk. They will put it into a larger pen of maybe 5 calves, and then they build up. So they have got complete control, and those animals are so well looked after. I can't. It always feels like what I'm doing is rubbishing the other side, and I'm not at all. They are producing a product for a market, and they are under so much pressure to produce it at a price. And basically, it's the cost of production. I mean, maybe a penny over every now and then, but pretty much they are beaten down continuously. I don't think I could morally be in that market anymore. Just stress that they would put me under. And it's abhorrent that food is so cheap. When you go to any farmer, I mean, they don't have much time off. They're working all the time. They're going out at 2 o'clock in the night calving cows, and they don't have weekends off. They don't have pensions paid. They're working really hard to produce food, and it feels like the supermarkets, and it is driven by the supermarkets, because they are just price competing all the time, just completely drive the price down to the absolute bare limit. They are literally brinkmanship. So they are saying, right, what can we get away with paying? If we can get away with paying 30 pence a litre to the farmers, let's do it. Oh, well, few are starting to go bust. Well, okay, let's make it 32. That's how it feels. And it's supposed to be in a global. We're on a global market for fat, but we're on different playing fields. What the farmers have to do over here, in certainly this side of Europe, is completely different from what they were doing in South America, where they're going to, or even some parts of Eastern Europe. The welfare standards are completely different, and yet we're on that market. We're told we've got to do all this stuff. We're told we've got to do carbon, what do they call it, mapping or whatever, and try and reduce our carbon, whereas everybody else is just carrying on as they were, pumping it out. Apart from obviously the Netherlands, they're obviously on a backlash, and going on to the Netherlands, it just feels like that's the way that the powers that be are trying to drive it. They're trying to drive all the farmers out of business, because how do you control a nation? You control it by its stomach. And if you've got people desperate if you've got people that are desperate for food, they'll do anything, absolutely anything. And that's why I feel so. Certainly from my point of view, I am very much. Let me put it this way: my Narnia would be a farm like us, 20 around every town, and the people would just run out, pick up some meat, pick up some milk, and go back again. So not a 15-minute city or anything like that, but having the food sources really close makes perfect sense for your carbon footprint, if nothing else. But also food security. Food security. We are on the edge continuously. If we have a big weather event, and I'll be honest with you, it does scare me though, because we had Beasts from the East many years ago. It was 5-6 years ago, and my little village near Swindon didn't have any milk for 2 days. So we put a shout out saying, we've got milk, if anyone wants to come. And it became a little bit of a, let's go to the farm and get some milk, and isn't it jolly? And we all had fun, and had snowball fights on the way. And it was a busy time for us, and it was a good time for us to put us on the map for our business. But after everybody went, and of course they went back to the supermarkets because it was convenient for them, I said to Sarah, I said, that's really scared me, because I remember weather events where we were off school for a week and the milk tanker couldn't get in. What are these people going to do if we have a 2-week event? So they're going to have no food, because they go to every week to the supermarket. And I've said to subsequent people, I'm speaking to a husband and wife, and like they got 2 children. And I'm saying, your wife is telling you You need to go and find food. These kids haven't eaten for a week. They're screaming their heads off. You're the man. Go and find some food. And I would say to the man, where are you going to go? Where are you going to go to find food? And it's, I don't know. So they have no idea either how to hunt or grow their own. And it's not their fault. Absolutely not their fault. This is a result of a convenience society where everything is provided. I mean, you go into the supermarket, you've just got a plethora of colour, and it's all just you're driven down all the allies, and you're supposed to have 5 of these a day, and it's a psyops. They're just telling you what to do all the time.
Yeah. Just on that, and just specifically back to the product, when people do go into a supermarket and they are selecting milk that's for the most part homogenized and pasteurized and or skimmed or semi-skimmed or any of that, what are those processes, and how do you perceive them as having affected the product itself, and indeed what would the effect be on the person consuming such a thing in your opinion?
Well, on that basis, I would never drink pasteurized milk. I wouldn't even drink my own pasteurized milk. That's how I feel about it. So pasteurization is basically heating up to at least, well, when we pasteurize our milk, we go to 63 degrees for 30 minutes, and then we cool it back down again. That's the least harmful way. You're not completely destroying all of the enzymes, as I understand. You're not denaturing the proteins. It's the reason they did pasteurization, and it was for a justified reason. So, turn of the 18th century, when the Industrial Revolution came, people started moving into town. There was no milk in town. They couldn't get the milk from the country to the town because they didn't have the refrigeration or the sanitary conditions to be able to transport it. So they did the other thing. They put the cows into town. Well, there's no grass in town. So they started feeding the cows bakery waste, brewery waste, just basically anything that they could get their hands on, which was already in town. Well, it effectively made the cows into a state of acidosis, so stomach ulcers. And milk in its raw form, if it's fed, if the cows are fed a species appropriate diet, grass, then raw milk has its own pathogen inhibitors in it. So you can basically, like things like E. coli and salmonella aren't good competitors. So there's the good bacteria will outcompete the bad bacteria. So raw milk in its proper state actually is inherently safe, as long as all the processes to get the milk to the bucket are correct. So what was happening in town? These cows were producing this awfully toxic milk, and people were getting ill from it. So it wasn't the cow, as always, it's not the cow, it's the how. So they pasteurized it to kill all the bad bacteria that was out competing because there wasn't any pathogen inhibitors in it. So it made sense, and that's just continued. Whereas they haven't actually, it's really old science which needs updating. But the dairy industry is so powerful. It's such a big industry, and there's so much milk products in so many different items that there's no way that the powers to be will allow it to go on. So you're asking about the process. So pasteurization that we do here, 63 degrees and then down. In the more fast speed commercial systems, I think, and I don't quote me, it's 72 degrees for 3 minutes. And then if you want to go to ultra high, it's 90 something for seconds. Well, that pretty much destroys all the good things in the milk. So the enzymes you need to digest it, the proteins, they're denatured, the vitamins are made basically, we can't assimilate them in our bodies. The next thing they do, well, actually, they may even do this before, is homogenization. Now, the homogenization process is, as you remember, fat will rise because it's a lighter density. So the milk will separate. And if you have milk separate, so it's the cream at the top and then the milk in the bottom, when you go to empty that vessel, you're going to get residual fat sticking to the outside of the bottle, the silo, whatever it may be. That's really hard to clean. It takes a lot of energy to clean it off. Whereas if you homogenize, so you smash the fat globule so it stays in suspension all the time, you don't get anything stick to the outside. Now, from my point of view, I think it was the dairy industry worked out that actually it's much easier and cheaper to clean all their equipment without the fat in its pure form. So they told the housewife, you need a standardized product, so you don't need to have to shake your bottle, and they sold it that way. But absolutely, I don't believe it for 1 minute that the housewife even had any opinion on it, because you just take what you get, don't you? They wouldn't even thought they needed to have a standardized product. So the homogenization with smashing up the fat globule till it's so small and stays in suspension. When you consume that milk, that fat globule was designed to take the all the good bits of the milk into the lower intestines. Actually protected it from the stomach to go into the lower intestines. But what's happening is going straight through the stomach wall. So you're getting a glycemic high from the milk. That's not how our bodies are supposed to assimilate this food. We are supposed to digest it in the lower intestines. And when it gets taken to the lower intestines, it feeds your joints, it feeds your brain. So arthritis, Alzheimer's, dementia, all of those things that our brain, our joints need are in the milk when it's digested in the lower intestines rather than straight to the stomach wall. We have parents with ADHD children, and this still blows me away. If they have shop bought milk before they go to bed, they basically can't sleep. If they have ours, they sleep. And it's because of the way the sugars are delivered. We even had one doctor prescribing his diabetic patients to come and get our milk because of the way the sugars were delivered. So they weren't getting a glycemic high, so it wasn't affecting their blood sugars. And I mean, I've got so many people that come here for health benefits. When not long after we started, we did a survey on our customers because we thought that the way we're farming was going to be the selling point. So, low stress, keeping cows and calves together, grass only. The reason people came was for gut health. They were coming for selfish reasons, nothing to do with what we were doing. When they found out what we were doing, it's just, of course, that's really good. And that's a bonus. But they were coming because they had IBS or they were constipated or the other, the opposite. And just by having our milk, it solved or certainly soothed a lot of those issues. Eczema, asthma. I remember we had one lady who was on two sorts of asthma. I say this isn't medical advice. This is anecdotal stuff that I can attest to. That she was on a blue inhaler and a brown inhaler, and I don't know which one's steroid or one's for emergency. And within a week, she was off them completely. Now the doctors told her she'd be on them for the rest of her life. So her diet was giving her a histamine response. And she was having to take these just because of what she was eating. She was having asthma, and we had a guy come. His eczema was so bad; it was so sad to see. When he opened his mouth, it's like it was cracked. It looked like the Joker from Batman. It was horrible. His face was just like crusty, and his hands were crusty. And within a month, that had all they hadn't so much healed, but it was like that pink, like pink skin like you get under a blister. And he brought his son out and said, "Show John your hands." And he showed me these hands, and they were the whole pads, like the palms were completely purple. Sorry, I'm colourblind. I struggle with colour. And I went, "Oh, that looks really painful." He went, "No, last week they were weeping. He was having to wear gloves to bed because he was like literally taking the skin off, and he could play normally as a child within a few weeks." And that makes a completely... People have asked me why I do what I do, and that's why I do what I do. Because I have people that rely on me for their health. I've had people say, "You can't stop doing what you're doing, John, because I'm ill without your food."
Mm-hmm.
I got one guy travels 2.5 miles to come and buy our milk. Sorry, 2.5 hours to come and get our milk.
From the way you describe it, I suppose I should say I'm not surprised. And yet, what's your response to in effect, the narrative? I mean, reading what the Food Standards Agency have to say about raw milk, you'd think that you were handling nuclear waste. They write that they have a section on their website describing how they're protecting people who choose to drink raw milk, suggesting that they should be in control of people's personal risk and choice, perhaps. In Scotland, of course, raw milk and cream are completely banned. The CDC in America describes raw milk as being one of the riskiest foods. How do you think it's come to that? And what's your feeling on the way that will push either the industry or the consumer?
Basically, don't Google raw milk. Use a different search engine.
Yes.
So we've actually got a very good relationship with the Food Standards Agency. We set up an organisation called the Raw Milk Producers Association, which I'm one of the founding directors of. And we have a really good communication link with the Food Standards Agency. The Food Standards Agency is a massive organisation, which is a very, very slow ship to turn, but we are in constant dialogue with them. Their end game is the same as ours. We want people to produce really good quality, clean, healthy raw milk so that our consumers can have the benefits from it. There's lots of legislation that is, to be honest with you, completely bonkers. And you read the rules, they make no sense at all. Like we can only sell raw milk from the farm gate. We're not allowed to, even if I go over like a foot over my boundary and try and sell it, that's illegal. We're subject to lots of testing, which is fine. We have no problem doing the testing. So obviously this gives the customers confidence, but maybe the levels they are set at aren't, they're not based in any science. They're just like somebody said, well, let's make that figure 100. There's no, when I was growing up, the milk that I drank from my father's cows, I wouldn't even be allowed to put onto a tanker now. It would have been that classed as that dirty. I'm very rarely ill. My sisters were never ill. We may have built up immunity to anything that was in that milk, but reality is, if your immune system is challenged on a regular basis, then you're going to have your immune response is already sorted out. I spoke to one of my customers who was I think he was a microbiologist, and he was talking about the immune system, how you build your immune system up to the age of about 14. And it doesn't learn much after that. It can learn, but it's those. So the old boys tale adage of eat a pound of shit before your teens. He said, actually, do you know what? Is absolutely right. The more you can get the kids into the soil and subject then much better their immune system will be. And he was actually modelling for the government they were talking about. He was doing a projection of if there was a bacterial outbreak and how it would affect the population. And he was actually quite scary. He said, there will be a whole section of the society that will be wiped out. And he was talking about the breeding age kids, and he called them the Dettol kids, the Dettol era kids, where the mothers were told, clean everything within an inch, 99% kills 99% germs, wipe your hands. And he said that whole era, so people up to 45, 50, that have been subjected to this sterilization will be the biggest victims of this if anything like that happens. So he said you'll have a twofold reduction in population. You'll have that breeding age, and then you have then you'll be left with young people and the older people. Well, obviously the older people then disappear. He says so it'll be it could be quite catastrophic for the population. So I think we have been sterilized our whole lives. We've been told we're going to cook all the food to within an inch of its life before it even gets to your home, and then we're going to tell you to wipe every surface down. So we don't have that natural immunity. So if you are a raw milk producer and you're following all the rules and the protocols, you're going to be producing healthy milk. There won't be any problem. Our problem comes when somebody who is farming decides they want to just sell a little bit on the side, under the table, and it makes somebody ill. Because that's the headline. Raw milk makes somebody ill. And it's not the Food Standards Agency approved producers, it's somebody else. The media just takes that headline and runs with it. And then it gives it everything, the bad, every good producer, the bad rep. So that's why we're working as much as we can with the Food Standards Agency to make it as safe as we can. And we're just in the process of starting out with the Raw Milk Producers Association, a supporters page, because there are a lot of people that have great benefits from raw milk, and is constantly under threat because of the bad science. So we're trying to, like I say, we work really closely with the Food Standards Agency, and we're trying to make raw milk as safe as possible. I mean, raw milk producers are diminishing in numbers. It's really sad. When I started, I think there's nearly 200. There's about 120 now, I think, in the country. And that's really sad to see. And it's got a lot to do with the process that we have to go through now. So before, it was up to the Food Standards Agency to prove that we were doing it correctly. Now it's up to us to prove we're doing it correctly with the Food Standards Agency, with a food management safety system, which they come and review every 6 months. And a lot of farmers just want to farm. They do not want to be stuck in the office doing paperwork. I personally don't. Thank God Sarah can do it, because I find it very tiresome. And in many ways, it's you need to know it, but on a daily basis, it actually doesn't make any difference at all. It's a tick box health and safety risk assessment form that we all have to go through just to make somebody with a clipboard a little bit happy. But the inference is on making sure that food, if you're producing raw milk for the right reasons, then it's not going to be a problem. If you're just trying to do it as a cash cow, in very much the same as the organic, if you can be organic but farm quite inorganically, but just sell it with the extra price tag attached. So it's an interesting time where I mean, I'm very much a great believer, and I'm sure your listeners will be, that the contract with the food producer should be direct. So if you want to see how your food's produced, come see me. I'll show you the cows. I'll show you what they've eaten, come and see the cow you're going to eat. Come and see the cow that you're going to have the milk from. That's the contract, and that's the responsibility of those two people. When you've taken the link away. So what happened years ago, when the Milk Marketing Board started, which again was started for all very good reasons, it took the consumer away from the farmer. So the value of that good diminished, because when our grandparents would have had the milk, the local farmer come up with his horse and cart, and you would have literally dipped, he would have dipped a ladle in, and how many quarts do you want today? He would have said to that customer, oh, I had a crap day today, I had such and such cow die, I was so wet, or things are great, the cows are milking really well. And on a daily basis, that perception of value would have been increased. So the housewife would have spent quite a lot of money on milk in proportion to her daily allowance, if you like. And the same would have gone for meat and vegetables, because it would have been locally sourced, and you would have had contact with that producer. So you were invested in your food. And that's what my customers basically do. They're not just buying milk, they're buying the process, they're buying a little bit of me, they're buying the contact. So many of my customers just say things like, oh, I've got a friend who's a farmer, and I'm that friend. And they can then link. So their food, when they describe their food to other people, it's not just, I bought some milk. I know I bought some milk from a raw milk producer, and he does this and he does that. And, he's really kind and friendly, and he'll interact with us, and he wants to show us the cows. And man, that's a completely different market than going into a shop and just picking up a bottle. You're picking up a bottle of probably, I don't know, 40, 50, 60 cows, different herds, maybe 50, 60 different herds, all just put into a big silo, mixed up. There's no tangible link to where that food comes from. And if you don't have that tangible link, then it becomes the value is only on the price tag, which is why the supermarkets do the bucket price list. So the bread's the same, all of whatever is in the basket, I don't know, but I know milk is one of them. And they just try to, these 5 items you can buy at 20 pence less from this supermarket rather than that supermarket. They've diminished the value so much that it's become such a commodity that, well, for instance, I think you used to be able to buy 2 litres of milk for £1 in one of our local supermarkets. Well, my milk is now £2.50 a litre. It's still too cheap. It should be more. Some of my customers pay £3. That's because they volunteer that. But the value is completely different. Completely different. They're looking at my food as a health food. My food, my meat, my milk, will keep them out of hospital. And when you're buying your health, it's a completely different mindset than just buying fuel to get you to the next meal. Because if you thought like that, you'd never buy a meal deal. You'd never go and buy a packet of crisps, a fizzy drink, and a chocolate bar, because you're going to feel hungry in 2 hours, and you're going to have to go and refill. I mean, it's a brilliant business model, absolutely brilliant, because they give you high carb food, so you're spiking your insulin, your blood sugar then drop. You think you're hungry when you're not, and so you just go in this awful cycle. I used to eat every 2 hours. If I didn't know where I was going to be in 2 hours, I would take food with me. And now, if I don't eat for 24 hours, it doesn't matter. The other day I did 36, and it wasn't because I was starving myself. It didn't fit in with what I was doing. I had a very late night, and I just thought, I'm just going to go to bed. There's no point eating now. And I survived. Yes, I had maybe something the following morning, a yogurt or something like that. But then I went through to the next, to my normal evening meal. It's a great business model where you just keep feeding crap and you just keep feeling hungry. The powers that be don't like what we're doing. They don't like what we're doing because people don't eat crap and they don't get ill. So there's no these days there's no profit in a satiated human that isn't ill, because if the pharmaceutical company and the fake food industry will do very badly, their profits will diminish.
Indeed, and that's what I was going to come on to, because you do speak with such conviction and assurance and knowledge on this, but you also refer to bad science, and I think it would be fair to say that in the years since 2020, we've seen how opposing views, particularly within the sort of scientific forum, have been in effect shut out. Have you found with what you're describing, particularly on the health benefit front of not just raw milk, but the other dietary programs you're talking about, are there people within the scientific community who are either willing to stand up and support your position, or indeed able to, in terms of finding funding and the channels within which to publish?
No, that's easy. No, there's not. There's no money. There's no money for any research. This is why we're trying to, as a Raw Milk Producers Association, we're trying to focus some of that research onto it. But like I said earlier, the dairy industry is such a strong industry. The pharmaceutical company is such a strong industry that any scientist, well, let's face it, most of the science for the last few years have been funded by the people that are going to profit from it. So of course they found out that it's they're even telling you, sponsored by Pfizer. They're even telling you that they bought the media, but people are still prepared to. Anyway, that's a different subject. That's not what we're talking about. But I have a lot of anecdotal evidence about the health benefits of raw milk. I'm not allowed to tell anything, and in my marketing, I'm not allowed to claim any health benefits at all. You
appear to have had little trouble. I mean, I'm not meaning to dismiss the incredibly hard work that it must have taken to get to this stage, but you have obviously convinced your buying public that what they are doing is the right thing for all sorts of reasons. How, in the wider context, are people to be convinced of what you speak? That's really hard. And I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, because if you'd have said to me 5 years ago, you'll never eat sugar again, I would have said to that person, I'm going to rip your face off in 2 hours because I'm going to need it. So I have great empathy for the people that are addicted to carbohydrates and sugar and the NHS system. And like I said about doing our survey, people come to us when they've gone through the NHS system, they've gone to the doctors, they can't find a cure for their acid reflux or their skin complaints or their asthma, and they've just read a snippet somewhere on the internet that raw milk helped this one person. And then they come to us, they try it, and they're just like completely bowled over. IBS is probably the biggest one. IBS, I think the results we've had with IBS has been incredible. And one of my neighbours, when she first moved in, she was on 6 Imodium a day as a maintenance dose. And within a month, she was off them completely. She actually came to me in the milking parlour one morning and said, John, I've had onions. I had onions last night for my tea. I went, that's really good. Well done. She went, I've still got them. And that is amazing.
And so it's a 20-minute trigger for her. So many foods were a 20-minute trigger. And just being able to have a glass of milk in the morning, and that's what we say. Treat it as a medicine. If you've got dietary issues or skin complaints, have a glass in the morning, make it the first thing, the last thing you do in the day, and the symptoms go away. And I can't remember where I was going with that. I can't remember what your question was now.
Well, it was to do with, in effect, sowing in people's minds the sense that what they're going to be doing in consuming raw milk is a good thing, as opposed to something that's going to kill you. But really, yes, it's that belief, or at least people being able to see outside of what they're being relentlessly told by the mainstream media, and how are you able to communicate that message and indeed reinforce it? Because it's this whole thing of bad science and the condemnation of anybody suggesting anecdotally, like you are, that this can be a good thing.
Yeah, and we that's what I was alluding to. We find that people will come to us when they've come to the end of all the other roads. Trying to convince somebody, if you've been told for so many years that raw milk's going to kill you, it's dangerous, your diabetes isn't reversible, you're just going to have to take inhalers for the rest of your life, you're just going to have to take Imodium for the rest of your life, that's just the way it is. Because there's no vested interest in anybody curing that. I mean, it seems to me very much like the medical industry are just symptom solvers rather than curers. There's no profit in a cured patient, is there? Let's face it. Mm-hmm. And so it's very difficult to go at somebody in the street and say, you should drink raw milk because it will make you better, it'll keep you out of hospital, because they've already got so ingrained beliefs that it's bad for you. Getting through, I don't know. It's very much a case of they have to come to us. I think we put the information out, but they have to come to us. It's very hard to this is a perfect forum for people to pick away at that mindset that if you get ill, you go to the NHS. I don't want to go anywhere near a doctor. As far as I'm concerned, I know a lot more about my health, my diet, how it's helped me. If you go to a diabetic nurse, they say have a balanced diet. Absolutely bloody not. If you got cut the sugars out, cut anything processed out, they don't say it, just have a balanced diet. Go to Weight Watchers, and I've seen what they. Different story. The whole balanced diet thing is a complete myth. It's not even a myth. It's a lie dreamt up by the supermarkets. 5 a day is a lie dreamt up by the supermarkets. Where in history, apart from the very modern history, this far north, in like the north of the hemisphere, would we have eaten anything but animal fat, animal protein from now right through till March? There's no bloody fruit on the trees, is there? There's nothing to eat. So I did a DNA test to find out where my heritage lies, because I thought that was important too. So I am slap bang in the middle where my heritage lies. Sarah's blonde hair, blue eyes. She's very much northern, like Scandinavian. Well, we wouldn't have eaten any fruit or any vegetable matter during the hard times, during the winters, which were, let's face it, a lot harder back, a few thousand years ago. It's only been the last second of our evolutionary story that we've eaten processed carbs and fruit every day of the year. And, the amount of fructose that I used to consume was ridiculous. And no wonder I was fat, because I was completely... I read a book on vitamin D, and Jeff Bowles, his name is, and he did experiments on really high levels of vitamin D. And he basically tells you the story of why vitamin D affects our bodies and why we go into like the SAD syndrome, the seasonal adjustment disorder. And it's all basic biology, really. So as soon as the sunlight diminishes, get to the equinox, we start to feel depressed. We eat more, because that's our precursor to a lean time. So we're supposed to eat the fructose in the spring and autumn, and do less, so we can preserve our body mass through the lean period coming into the next season of abundance. So we shouldn't eat fruit every day. If you've got northern genes, you should not eat fruit every second day of the year, and you shouldn't eat bananas and kiwi fruit and mangoes and all the stuff that's got such high fructose. If I ever do eat fruit, and I tend not to, it would be blueberries, raspberries, strawberries. But even then, they've been genetically engineered to be much sweeter, much higher fructose. So our bodies, when we are presented with fructose, we put on weight. It's the natural order of things, because the fruit would only be available in that season for somebody this north. So our response to fructose is to put on weight. That's the whole point of insulin, to actually put the fat into our cells. And when you realize that we are dual fuel burners, but we only store the fat for the lean period, but we never have a lean period anymore. So that's why 5 a day is complete rubbish. Balanced diet is complete rubbish, because what's your balance? If I say to you, what's your fat protein ideal mix? What's your carbohydrate? How much carbohydrate should you have? Nobody has an answer, because it's complete. It's just a thing that's chucked out there, and nobody knows the answer. So they eat a balanced diet, which is completely not balanced for their genetics. My when I just eat animal fat, animal protein, I'm having a balanced diet. I can prove that with my blood, so I can prove that with my energy levels. My brain fog's gone. My weight doesn't fluctuate. I'm eating right for my body type, for my genes, for my ancestral diet. So the science is skewed to the people that are trying to that are actually doing the research, and it's science is bought now, isn't it? So it's a very much a case of you need to really start looking at the basics of the fundamental basics of life. Will give you all the answers you need. Like my dogs just eat chicken carcasses basically, and any other rubbish they can find around. I only feed them 5 days out of 7, because dogs don't eat wheat and sweet potato and all this other stuff that makes their poo slimy and sticky and gives them diabetes. I mean, dogs shouldn't get diabetes. That's just absolute bonkers. My dog's teeth don't need cleaning, because the bones are cleaning and massaging their jaws every day. So I keep feeding my dogs a species appropriate diet, so they don't go to the vet. I don't get inoculations. They're healthy, Yeah. So I think as trying to get through to like the initial question was how do we convince the people that just on the raw milk that it's a good idea, when the science and the media are so driven in one direction, the narrative is so strong. People only come to us when they come to the end of that tether and go, right, I need to look for something else. The NHS is a brilliant organisation, but completely abused. There's no personal responsibility for our health anymore, because I'm going to get ill, I'll just go to the NHS. I'm pretty much likely to get cancer. I'm pretty much likely to get arthritis and dementia. You can avoid most of those things, cancers especially. One of my bugbears and one of my things I really want to do, and I must get around to doing, is having a Macmillan coffee morning with no sugar. Because sugar feeds cancer. The irony of having cake stalls, and again, they're not doing it because it's just pure ignorance. They don't understand that the cancer feeds the sugar feeds the cancer, and now they are pushing it more and more. Just makes no sense to me before. And I just want to smack some bells around their heads and go, sort it out. You can affect how your body deals with cancer. We've all got cancer in us all of the time. Our bodies are naturally taking those cancer cells out. We are full of cancer, because that's just the nature of things. The fact that we're low on vitamin D, the fact that we eat all the time, so there's no autophagy where your body eats those cells. 3 meals a day is complete. I mean, you shouldn't eat 3 meals a day, because your body can't go through its natural processes. Like, whereabouts in history would we have eaten 3 times a day? Well, only since they provided food that gives them profits. Years ago, farmers would have eaten just what they killed, and they probably would have eaten once a day in the evening, round a campfire. So we didn't have all these diseases because they're a result of a modern diet. Well, work out that we don't need the modern diet. The modern diet is killing us all, but it's also making a lot of people very, very, very profitable. So my influence, I think my whole look on life is trying to go back to basics, just trying to make it as basic as possible, give the animals as much of a natural existence as they can. Clearly, it's not a natural existence. Of course it's not. But I can give them the diet they need. I can give them the low stress systems they need. And then they pay me back by producing food that is very high in protein and nutrient density. And when you eat my meat, that sounded bad. When you consume my meat, you don't need anywhere near as much, because the quality of the protein from grass-fed meat it's like going to a really fancy restaurant and you get this little portion. You think, I got to stop at the fish shop on the way back because that's never going to fill me up. You eat it and you can't eat anything more. You couldn't even do a pudding because it's such rich, high quality food. And it's the same with the meat that I produce. And there's loads of grass-fed producers around, and anybody that's anywhere, just put it into your search engine, grass-fed meat near me, and just go and buy some grass-fed meat and find out how the quality differs from what you're buying from the commercially available high starch fed, high cereals fed meat. It's like the bodybuilder. They get all muscly, but the muscle has not actually got much quality. Whereas you go to a weightlifter, you're going to get a lot more density in the muscle. And I mean, I've had people buy our mince and just go, God, we couldn't eat it all. Normally we would just eat all that and it would be gone. But my husband said, I can't face any more. And because our bodies naturally, when we have, our bodies recognize protein, that's what makes us satiated, protein and fat. When we eat protein and fat, you can't overeat meat. It's virtually impossible. You can overeat carbohydrates because there's no natural link for your body to say stop, because that would have been our time when we needed to put weight on. So the carbohydrates would have been available during summer, autumn, ready to put the fat on, ready for the lean period. But you eat animal fat, animal protein, you can't overeat. It's impossible to do it. Try it. Try and have 4 or 5 burgers and see how far you get, and then weigh that out in an equivalent carbohydrate weight, and you'll get those biscuits down your throat, no problem at all. But you won't get that weight in meat.
And yet, as you say, these are the sorts of messages that are not getting to the consumer, and much of what you describe, industry pressure and that from legislation, guidance, policy, all the rest of it means that these sorts of things are obviously very, very difficult for you and those who are doing similar things to you are to actually get out to the public. Going back to sort of your position as a farmer, but also within the farming community, what other, if any, sort of ideological pressures do you feel from the sort of activist lobbying side of it, which of course is very much having an influence on government policy? And I think 2 obvious ones would be the sort of so-called climate emergency, and then the other one would be the push towards a plant-based or a vegan diet.
The vegan diet is brought forward by the fake food industry. That's quite clearly driven by industry. Again, how do you control a nation? Via their stomachs. If you can control the food, you can control everything. And that's one of their absolute goals, isn't it? To actually control everything. Climate change, from my point of view, we're just in the end of a mini ice age, and it's all going to fluctuate. I'm not saying we don't have any effect on the climate. Of course we do. I drove to Bristol the other day, and the amount of traffic on the motorway was just abhorrent, really. And I did think to myself, where are these people going? Why do they need to be travelling? So I'm not saying that we don't have an effect, but when we have, I think there was a volcano in Iceland that went up, 5-6 years ago. We couldn't fly to America, all the planes were stopped. That pumped out more CO2 than we in 3 months than we had since the Industrial Revolution. Are we really making that much of a difference? No. In comparison to China and India, they're poor nation. They're not going to stop. They're trying to increase their value. There's no way we're not stopping. By you buying an electric car isn't going to make actually that much difference, other than the fact that you just put all the carbon in the front end rather than actually using it on the other end. Methane's the other thing with the animals. They're saying, cows fart. Well, it doesn't matter what process what they actually go through. That grass, when it grows and it decomposes, lets off methane, whether it's through a cow or whether it's in the ground. It's the same process.
But are you finding that via either through sort of regulatory pressure or financial incentive that you as a farmer are being pushed to conduct your business in a particular way on that front?
Absolutely. Yeah, they are very much trying to make us farm, environmentally. So they're paying us to produce things that aren't food. I've got an example of a friend who's quite close to me. He was producing, I think, 500 tons of milling wheat every year, which is quite hard to do because that's a really high quality wheat. And you get losses, you get bad weather, you have a constant pest, you're spraying for pests all the time, you have fertilizers. He actually gets paid now to grow sunflowers. Doesn't harvest them, he just cuts them up and drops them into the ground. He gets paid by the taxpayer to produce sunflowers that gets put into the ground. Now that's wrong. That's not how it should be. We shouldn't be doing. I take a subsidy where I get paid for not cutting the hedges, which actually works brilliantly for me because I'm actually now in a program that I started before even that was even a thing. I think to try and increase the hedgerow mass. I see the increase in the biomass of the amount of insects and birds that have resulted from that. I'm not putting fertilizers and chemicals down, so the soil health is better. We're planting herbal lays, but that all benefits the whole process. So actually, that's a good thing to promote for farmers to do. But there are a lot of big arable farmers that are actually being told not to produce food. It does seem to me like they're trying to manufacture a food shortage. They're making dairy farming very hard to do with our carbon footprint and all the legislation, the farm assurance. I think there's a lot of farmers now coming out of the farm assurance because it's so restrictive. Dairy farmers can't, unfortunately, because they won't be able to sell their milk, so they are bound to it. But beef farmers and some of the arable farmers are just saying, "Yeah, we're not playing your games anymore. But we know how to do it. We don't need you to tell us how to do it." So there is a lot of legislation and lots of restrictions. There's a lot of people watching every single farmer, which again, taxpayers paying for. Are they getting value for their money? We all know there's lots of people with clipboards following everybody else with clipboards. So from my point of view, I'd be quite happy to have no government intervention or help. Unfortunately, I need the help because I can't make everything else pay. And that's where it's gone wrong. And as I said earlier, the perceived value of food, I think I saw something where people at the start of the 19th century spent something like 80% of their food went on everyday essentials, clothes, heating and food, and now it's 20%. It may be a little bit different the last year or two. But the inference is that people need to have leisure, 2 cars, 2 holidays. The importance of food and quality of food is completely inverse now. And the reality is food is too cheap. It's too cheap. If I said to somebody the other day, what do you think I should earn as a professional farmer? And they had no answer for me. They couldn't put me into any sort of bracket. And it's a really good question to ask because, I know people that are on 80, 150,000 pounds a year. They go to an office, they do 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. They don't actually produce anything. And I'm not diminishing their jobs. The jobs that they do are there for a reason. They're not actually producing anything. They rely on me to produce the food for them once, twice, 3 times a day. And yet my value is right at the bottom. And I think there's been a concerted effort to devalue farmers. I mean, you never see a poor farmer. I'll line them up for you now. I can assure you there are a lot out there that are, well, I haven't taken a wage for 4 years. Why, I'm just doing it because I love what I'm doing. I cover my bills. I don't know. I had 1 day off last year, and that was to go to the Raw Milk Producers Association AGM. So there wasn't even a day off. And it's very hard to put us into any kind of a bracket where you would say, oh yeah, no, you should earn £150,000 a year and you should have 6 weeks holiday a year. I mean, it's just not going to happen. It's completely, that's so far away from reality and what of reality of today. But why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I? I'm a professional. I'm doing, I've got a business. I don't have a pension. I've, my assets are basically my pension. Well, that's only good when I sell it. Why should I not have time off and be able to have a normal life just because food needs to be cheap since the Second World War. You know, we can't have a hungry nation, but food needs to be cheap. But why should it be? Why should it be? You know, footballers are being paid stupid amounts of money, and the salaries are just what people tell me they earn. It's just like fairy tale figures.
If I were to ask what your aspirations are for not just your business, but for the industry you're in, and for the exposure that the consumer has to either the products or the information, what are you sort of hoping for, I suppose, in terms of an optimistic but realistic future in the next few years?
I want to see thousands of little farmers like me just starting up. But we're small, 60 cows. We're very small, and there is a place for us in the future. So whether that be for food security or just pure nutritional basis, but the only way it happens is if it's consumer led. So anybody that's got a farm near to them, go and support them, because when that lorry can't come from the central hub and get to your supermarket when there's a weather event, you need to make sure you've got food. And I think, I don't know, it seems like they're trying to collapse the whole system. I in some ways, I want that to happen, but we're not prepared for it. So I would like to see, and there is a growing micro dairy movement where people are realizing that the food is rubbish, what they're buying, and they want to produce their own. But we need so many more people just to take on that there is a future in agriculture and producing good, high quality, nutrient dense foods. It's not easy, and the whole inference needs to change on the value of that food. It needs to become far more higher up people's priorities. But that is what I would like to see. Lots of small farmers like us serving a local community, and for them to be appreciated in the way that they appreciated for what they're doing. Because I think this whole centralized system is great. While carbon's cheap and you can transport it, milk hundreds of miles and still make a profit out of it for the dairy companies. As soon as they start reducing the carbon availability or increasing the price of it, then it becomes unsustainable. And everybody needs to have food security, and don't think it's not your responsibility, because it is your responsibility. If you haven't got food in the larder and the shop hasn't got any, what are you going to do? And this is probably my big rallying call: is food security is your responsibility and nobody else's. If you haven't got food in the cupboard, it's your fault, nobody else's. Don't blame the supermarkets. They haven't got your back. They're just looking for their profits. And if they're not going to go out of their way to try and get the snowplows out to get in, or God forbid anything else worse happens. If anything worse happens, then another pandemic or even a real pandemic would be an issue, where people actually are genuinely ill and genuinely dying from what they're saying they're dying from. That would be a real issue. And where are you going to get your food from? Food security, I think, is my biggest concern. And even on a personal level, I've put things in place to protect the farm if it all does go to rubbish. If we ever do, and look at toilet rolls, people were fighting over toilet rolls, and it wasn't even a symptom of the fake disease that they said it was. So they were fighting over what happens when the people are hungry. Well, I become a target then, because I've got food that's walking around on four legs. I'm producing it every day. I've got chickens. When that man comes and said, I'm not allowed to go home until I've got food, and they're going to point to me and say, you're going to feed me today, and I'm going to say, no, I'm not. They're going to say, yes, you are. And then who's the battle there will then become, who's the best fighter? And like I say, I've got things in place that I will be the better fighter. And if you want food, don't come here, because you're going to end up with a very bloody nose. But there's going to be a lot of farms around that have no protection, and I fear genuinely for martial law or lawlessness. Basically, if it turns to lawlessness, the whole country is just going to go very hungry very quickly. And my local town here is 220,000 people, I think it is. What are they going to eat? Where are they going to go? we're on the map. You can get food from Purton. I can feed my customers. I can't feed any more. And that's not going to be a good enough answer for people. So I am genuinely scared about food security and how people will react if or when if there isn't food in the supermarkets.
Well, that's a very considered note to end on. I'm afraid we will have to wrap it up there, but I sense that viewers and listeners will have been hanging on your every word. Jon, what people will definitely want to know is where can they follow what you're doing if they're that little bit too far away from you, or if they're close enough, how can they get to you?
Okay, we've got a website, www.dorasdairy.co.uk, and we're at a little place called Purton, just outside Swindon. We only obviously have a limited amount of produce. We're only quite a small farm, and we are at the moment selling all of our milk without any problems at all. We have, if people are interested in supporting what we're doing, we do have sponsor a calf programs where you can see how we bring our calves up. We're also going to be doing a Dora's Dairy Club, so you can see what we do on a regular basis and what our emphasis is on. And we'll have a Facebook page, Instagram page, and hopefully we're going to be doing more social media to drive that. So we can. The problem with this farm our size is staying profitable, and as you well know, everybody's costs are going up. So we're trying to produce products that are not just food related, and trying to. I think it's important that businesses like ours, and there's lots of us little farms around the country that are trying to do animal welfare properly, produce really high dense nutrient food. But we're going to need help to stay in business. And the more businesses that we can promote, more businesses will start, and then we'll start to complete the cycle on the whole food security issue. So, if you can support us, absolutely, we'd be really grateful.
Jon, thanks so much. Well, we'll put all that in the notes to accompany the interview. You've been an absolutely terrific guest, and the sheer volume of information that's come out has been outstanding, but also the complete passion with which you speak is very, very inspiring. So we wish you luck with your endeavours, and I should just point out that all of this will be available at ukcolumn.org, and if you like what UK Column does, please do consider a subscription, because it's those subscriptions that enable us to be able to put on fantastic interviews like this. So Jon, thank you very much indeed. It's been a real pleasure to have you on.
Thank you. I've enjoyed doing it.